my attachment to the site actually began in the winter of 1988, when my parents and I came here with my grandmother, who was visiting from the United Kingdom. And why this stands out to me is it was one of the first opportunities I had to really experience the past. We were with a wonderful tour guide at the time, and he put the old-fashioned army uniform on me and put a drum in front of me and allowed little me to play one of the old-fashioned drums, and it was from that moment that, if you will, that I was sort of hooked into the history of this site and the history of Canada. That's when I knew what I really wanted to do going forward, and I'm still here. My name is Ewan Wardle, and I'm a Program Development Officer here at Fort York National Historic Site. I've worked here in one capacity or another since the summer of 2000. Fort York National Historic Site opened as a city museum on Victoria Day of 1934. The opening of the museum was part of a centennial celebrations for the city of Toronto. So Toronto was celebrating its 100-year history in 1934. And unfortunately, during that time, you had the Great Depression, and it was quite common for government bodies like the province, the city, the federal government to invest in major heritage restoration projects to find work for unemployed craftsmen. So in the case of Fort York was an example of this, where you had a major public works project that was designed to help employ skilled workers during the height of the Great Depression. So the visitor center you see today had its soft opening in September of 2014. And during its first couple of years in operation, we had rotating galleries and exhibits on display. And then, of course, we have a whole host of special events throughout the year, from sort of our core programming events all the way to major arts and cultural festivals, including our annual Indigenous Arts Festival. I would say Fort York is seasonal. Depending on when you come here, you will experience different sides of Fort York. Quite often animate our officers' mess dinner kitchen. So this is an early 19th century kitchen, and the recipes we prepare in there are recipes that the officers who resided at Fort York would have been very familiar with. So as a bonus to your tour, you get to come into the warmth of our mess kitchen, and you get to try samples of the foods that the officers would have enjoyed. So it's once again a very intimate, very homey experience. Whereas if you come in the summer, not only, of course, do we have the kitchen animated in these tours, but we also, the weather allows us to beef up our operation. So in the months of July and August, for example, we have the Fort York Summer Guard. These are high school and university students who wear the uniforms of British soldiers from the time of the War of 1812, and they perform hourly demonstrations in the fort, including musket and artillery firing, if you will, the roar of battle. Try to kind of paraphrase Pierre Burton, it's only on these grounds that you walk in history. So where you're standing is a spot sort of captured in time. And what's very cool about Fort York as well is that you're not only next to some of the oldest buildings in the city, the largest collection of original War of 1812 buildings in Canada, but if you look around you, you can see the development of our modern city. You see what remains of sort of the Victorian warehouses and factories that used to line the rail corridor down here. You see the Gardner Expressway, this highway in the sky, this vision of the future back in the 1950s. And now today, you have the steel and glass condominiums of the 21st century. So you have this beautiful juxtaposition between the old and new, all in this one spot of Toronto. And so, again, I come to this place with that passion and love of history as a child, but with that appreciation of all that this site represents and the history that is part of this living fabric around me. And that's how actually I started officially working here, was with the Summer Guard. So when I started working here, it was as a summer student. I was still in high school at the time. So young men and women, and this is their summer job. So instead of flipping burgers at McDonald's or pouring lattes at Starbucks, they get the privilege to wear wool at the height of summer.